On this episode of the Soul Twin Stars podcast.
I'm so happy. I just meditate every day and I burn my incense and my sage and I sit in the lotus position and clear my chakras and everything's great. I'm calling bullshit on all of that.
It's what makes you feel alive inside and full of divinity.
The frontal lobe development is very different 50 years ago as to now.
You know how many men love scratchy voices?
Oh, I do. Yes.
And women.
Hi, I'm Lady Shadow, a witch with much to share, stirring the cauldron with magical self-care.
Hi, I'm Peaceful Nick, a medium divine. I chat with the dead and interpret every sign.
We are Soul Twin Stars, best friends through it all.
From spells to healing,
we're answering the call.
From moon cycles to menopause and making peace with the dead.
We aren't afraid to talk about what's rarely said.
So tune in each week to get raw, real, and wise.
Let's talk about a spiritual life with absolutely no disguise. Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast, Uninhibited Spirituality. Peaceful Nick and Lady Shadow here. We would like to first and foremost thank our sponsors for this episode. Thank you to Beans and Buttercream Bakery. Delicious homemade treats shipped anywhere. Call 417-973-2352. And Abernathy Photography, based in southwestern Kentucky, a professional and stellar company providing drone photography in both local and destination weddings. Visit abernathyphotography.com. Author Mary Ray's self-reflection workbook on conquering shame and guilt, Tell the Devil to Go to Hell, an interactive memoir, is available on Amazon.com. Craving delicious Italian cuisine? You can find it right here in Westchester County, New York at Fino Restaurant. That's Fino Restaurant at One Baltic Place in Croton-on-Hudson, New York. All of our sponsors are linked up on our Soul Twin Stars podcast Facebook page, and we thank them for making this podcast possible. And now, back to our episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Twin Stars podcast. I am Peaceful Nick the Medium, and I am joined writing in on her
Colorful rainbow elephant today.
colorful rainbow elephant is the wonderful and amazing Lady Shadow. Thank you all for being here again. I will say I am a little under the weather, so if my voice is a little low, just crank up that volume. And we are happy and excited to be here. We're going to talk about toxic positivity and spiritual yum-yums and all kinds of goodies. And I would like to start with my divine moment. Is that okay with you, Lady Shadow?
Everything is okay with me, and I would like to say for the record that your voice sounds super extra sexy today.
Oh, thank you. Well, it is a little scratchy, but we'll get through this together.
You know how many men love scratchy voices?
Oh, I do. Yes.
And women.
Yes. I want to talk about self-care today. So when you're feeling under the weather, it's very important, or anytime you feel the need for rest, relaxation, or any type of respite, take the time and care for yourself. Take some extra vitamin C packets, take some extra naps. I took 2 naps today. I'm a napping person. And, trim your nails, paint your nails, get a pedicure, get your legs waxed, whatever other parts you want to get waxed. Care for yourself because you can care for yourself better than anyone because you know what you need for yourself. Yes, people can bring you things and bring you soup or a cup of coffee, and that's all great and wonderful and appreciated, but we know how we need to be cared for ourselves. So never be afraid to take care of you when you need to. And that's my divine moment today, self-care.
I love that. And self-care doesn't have to even come when you're under the weather. Like you said, it could literally be any moment of any day. And we have to remember, we cannot be of service to others if we are not healthy and strong and in a good place to give to others. So, just like they say on the airplane, what do they say about the oxygen masks?
Put your own oxygen mask on first.
That's right, even before your own child, because you're not going to be able to help anyone if you can't breathe yourself. It's pretty interesting that we are taught, programmed, and
Mm-hmm.
regularly fed that none of
Mm-hmm.
that matters and to put your needs on the back burner for everybody else. And that
But who is usually taught and programmed that, males or females?
it makes you wonder, but I hear it all the time in the media from all sides, all day, that we are meant to suffer and that we should just suck it up, and that no matter what goes on, we're supposed to carry the positive vibe and deny our own pleasures and deny our own self care, like you said, and just power through. And yes, it does fall on the women a lot because we are the bearer of the children. But we are here tonight to break that wide open and talk about the difference between sovereignty and toxic positivity. And a lot of people don't know the difference and they think, hey, we're on this spiritual journey, so I'm good. I'm just going to go on YouTube and listen to some stuff or read a life changing book. But then there's still this little organic spark that's missing between, am I doing this right? Or am I supposed to go through a particular protocol? So tonight we discussed that. We discussed there is no protocol, and we discussed that it's different for everybody, and that spirituality is largely practiced and felt through our own higher selves. And it's a gut feeling like every other decision and every other life path and every other experience that we choose in this life through our gut, based on, does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it feel weird? Does it feel sad? Does it feel guilt ridden? Does it feel free? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, my friend.
I think that's great. And there are two terms we are going to cover, and I'm going to define them and then we're going to discuss together. Spiritual sovereignty means owning your personal spiritual truth and inner authority, making choices aligned with your soul rather than external pressures or dogmas. And then there's toxic positivity, which is the overemphasis on positive thinking that denies or suppresses real emotions and human experiences. Now, we are going to talk about how to stay spiritually empowered without bypassing pain, grief, or struggle using these terms, spiritual sovereignty and toxic positivity. So, Lady Shadow, tell me what you think about spiritual sovereignty.
Yes, and for me, that means true authenticity to yourself. So if you know yourself, which a lot of us don't, a lot
Correct.
of us don't know who we truly are, and we're very easily swayed by the effect others have on us, like our families, right?
Yes.
My husband was really bad about this in the early parts of our dating, and he knows that we've talked about this openly, and he's not afraid that I share this. But he would go home, bring me home for some kind of family event. And the minute he walked in the door, he would become a different person. He was unrecognizable and just sort of shut down in a way, like shut down one side of his personality. And then another side would be depressed or suppressed, a little bit of both. And then another side would emerge that I'd never even seen before, like this really weird avoidant, like anxiousness that would
Mhm.
take place.
Mhm.
And here I am thinking, oh, we're walking in together because I'm already anxious because, I don't know his family very well. And I'm trying to be my authentic self. And he just goes into, used to go into this opposite direction. And I thought, oh my God, who is this? Like, who is this guy? Like, why is he being this way around his family? Because I'm 95% my authentic self wherever I go. What you see is what you get. I know how to behave in a professional environment. I know how to behave amongst my family and friends. And if I have to alter my behavior a little bit based on the situation or circumstance, I can. But overall, I'm like consistently across the board. But my poor husband would just become like this kind of shut down little shell in his family's presence. And he didn't sparkle the same way that I knew him as the sparkler, you know?
Right.
And so we would have a chat about this. And I'm like, where were you for the last 4 hours? Because like I didn't recognize this guy at all. And he's like, I don't know. And it took us several talks and several months to kind of figure out what that was. But it was just that old reverting to I'm a son with no voice who's a little misunderstood. And so I'm just going to stand here and let these people be them while I figure out who that boy is still. And thank God, Chris and I are super deep talkers and great conversationalists. And we psychologically kind of and spiritually worked that out. And I helped him kind of define what that meant. Because even when my grandmother was alive, she lived to be 97. She knew all of my open lifestyle choices. I was not afraid to even tell her, who's old school, right? Because this is who I am, Grams. I love a little bit of everybody. And my marriage is a little untraditional, but we're happy and everything's on the table and everything's out in the open for everyone to know. And even with my grandma, I was never afraid to disappoint her, even if it may have come across that way at first, or me thinking that I was going to disappoint her by not being my authentic self. But that is so important. So to me, spiritual sovereignty is authenticity to yourself first, who you are, how you want to live your life, as long as it's obviously in consent, all parties, adult consent, and that you are not hurting people, right? Including yourself. So that to me is most important. All the other things that define us, what we do for a living, how we choose friends, how we choose partners, how we operate within those relationships and friendships, that all comes as we go and as we wake up and decide what's going to happen in our day and what words we're going to choose, just like in this podcast, what words we're choosing to talk to our wonderful followers about these things. But authenticity to me is freedom and is the highest truth you can reach between you and your higher self and your source. And the rest, like I said, is a fill in the blank as you go. And hopefully, when you rest your head on that pillow every night, you go to sleep with a clear conscience about who you are and what you've done with your days, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I had a similar experience with my husband when we would be around his family because I knew him very differently.
Right?
Right. And I think that's pretty typical. And it was like being around someone that was very different than the person I knew in our regular lives. So yeah, and we had many talks. I mean, we've been married, it'll be 30 years in May. So yeah, that's those days are over, thank God. But it does take time to get unconditioned, unprogrammed from your what your expectations in your family are. So if you have a partner who is very different around their family, maybe gently bring it up. Say, how come, or maybe go to therapy. That's a good one. But I'm going to give an example of somebody who's had spiritual sovereignty for a long time. Now, you and I are both very much who we are 95% of the time, except in professional. Like, I wouldn't say things at a job the way you and I talk on the phone, right?
Or when you and I talk here about
Right,
pussies needing their own bedroom.
right. But it's about self-trust and inner discernment. And I have a very large family, and for a period of time, family of origin, and we're a blended family. And my youngest sister, who I'm very close to, we were all going to this huge family therapy once a month or something like that for months and months, trying to work out all our problems with like 10 people in the room, which was kind of ridiculous notion on the therapist part, but that's neither here nor there. And I remember my youngest sister just saying, "You guys aren't my kind of people." And she was like 16 at the time. And I'm like, I understand what she's saying, but I didn't understand how checked into her own sovereignty she was until the past couple of years. And that was 35 years ago. And she would be like, "You're not my kind of people." But what she meant is she's not vibing on the same frequency as the rest of the family. She already was sovereign in her own way, in her own thoughts, and her own life methodologies, not falling into maybe a facade presented by the other members of the family. She was already very much independent minded in how she wanted to live her own truth, which now I understand in a much different way than I did before because now she's also on a spiritual journey. Yeah. And I'm on a spiritual journey. And so it's interesting to see how people grow and evolve.
I agree. And not just watching others and ourselves, but integrating and recognizing fellow souls that are standing up for what they believe in and for who they are and not backing down and not, like you say, becoming the chameleon that your coworkers want you to be, right?
Or
Or
your
which is,
family.
or your family, or even your longtime best friend. Somebody close to me recently lost their best friend due to a roommate situation. And it was so devastating for her because she had no idea that they would ever be at the point where their friendship would break. I mean, they were best friends for about 11 years. And overnight, it dismantled itself with a situation that blew up, and there were these secret resentments she didn't know about. And they had been roommates for a long time, and she thought, well, this is great, I'm best friends with my roommate. But then when it came time to move out, all these crazy truths were dropped, and she was totally sidekicked, dropped on her head, and had no idea what the heck happened. And they're still not talking. It's been like 4 months, and she's so devastated by this. I mean, the investment that she made in this relationship, only for it to just flip on its head, she was devastated. And so that does tend to happen sometimes. And that's where, without explanation or without communication or without any thought or consideration for how the overnight tide just turned, and for her best friend to go, "Mwah, see ya, don't want to be ya," without any resolve. It makes you wonder if that person ever really did have the authentic relationship they claimed the whole time. And I know this happens to all of us at some point, right? Where we're all in it 100% with somebody. And then the next minute, one thing triggers someone and it's over. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is inauthentic. It just means that the more open we are and we stay in check with each other and ourselves and in our relationships, hopefully we don't get blindsided, and what we can stay within the parameters of what we thought somebody was, who we thought somebody was. And I'm learning that with my own family, right? I'm realizing, certain people that I knew aren't necessarily who I thought they were,
Mm.
right? And when you have that realization, and it's not just like you were saying, it's more than a non-mesh. Like you said, it's a deep programming that has to be undone, because when something feels really off and deeply disturbing and we put it to the side, and here we are talking about toxic positivity, this is a perfect example of that. You don't really feel that way. It's just a thing. You just have to just suck it up, be grateful, stay positive, don't feel that thing, all of that programming, and then add some guilt. Then it becomes something else, the monster of that toxicity.
Absolutely. And religious indoctrination can do that, and cultural indoctrination as well, for sure. I agree with that completely. Especially again, with women, young women are taught to be submissive and be and smile and dress a certain way and be a virgin till they're married and have all this perfection, when in reality that's not reality. Most, you know, this is not, we're just indoctrinated in so many different ways in society, and it's not good. We need to do a lot of self-exploration in what we really enjoy, who we really are. And we're not given that opportunity a lot of times because we're told who we are. Example, I was a teacher for in the classroom for 20 years, and I'm a mother of adult children, and I have a very large family, an extended family. And I've seen a lot of people telling their kids who they are from birth. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be a supermodel. You're going to be a loser. You're just like your dad, and I hate your dad. Don't be like your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they tell them, parents tell their kids so many things. I thinking back, there were things I told my kids that I should have never said to them, but there's no guidebook. So if you're a parent listening to this, let your kids figure out who they are, give them, options. Maybe they want to play guitar, maybe they want to play baseball, maybe they want to take an art class or take a taekwondo class. Don't tell them what they have to do. Give them different options, and don't do all of that in 1 week, by the way.
Yeah.
Spread it out a little bit. Let them explore and find out what they like, so
Yeah.
they can have human sovereignty. And then they'll have a better chance of developing their own spiritual sovereignty.
Oh, agreed. The more choices you give your child, the better at all different ages. I remember one of the things my mom did really, really right was I was 15 dating an 18-year-old, and my mom completely trusted me to make decisions sexually. She wasn't afraid to leave me alone with my boyfriend. She wasn't afraid to let me go down and spend the night with him in obviously a home with other parents. He was still living with his parents at the time. And so she sat me down and, we had many talks about the birds and the bees at a very young age. I mean, 6 years old, she sat me down. Then she sat me down again at 10. Then she sat me down again at 12 and 15. So it was ingrained in my head to be safe, to be making smart choices with my body. And I always did, thank goodness. And unlike you, which my soul goes out to you because of the horrible abuse you endured, thank God I did not have any of that happen to me. And so many people have. And again, my heart goes out because I can't imagine having to navigate your adult life with having to deal with that bullshit. So I am sorry you had to go through that. And thank God you have come out to be a most beautiful and balanced person. And so many of us, who have or haven't struggled with that, sadly, we still have to go on and try to make sense and put together our lives and work through it like you have. But my mom trusted me to make these decisions. She gave me the room to navigate that relationship at that age myself. And I did come out to prove, hey, you know what? I'm not having sex until I'm ready. I'm not even probably going to have sex with you, boyfriend. And I didn't at the time. That wasn't the one that I chose to hand over my sovereignty to later. But the fact that I was allowed to make these choices at that age, even though nowadays giving a 15-year-old a choice like that's a very different one than probably in 1985. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I do agree that the frontal lobe development is very different 50 years ago as to now.
Right. And that could be from the lack of minerals and all the chemicals in our food now. I mean, that's just the beginning.
Another
But
podcast subject.
we will hit on that one day. But the point is that parents, like you just said, have to raise their children somehow. They have to at some point choose, okay, do we impose our own traditions and beliefs on these people, or do we give them a choice? Do we give them the gamut of things they could pick from and that's out there, or do we raise them strictly the way we want to raise them? And most parents say, I'm going to raise my kid like this, and this is how I'm going to do it, and that's that. And they don't even realize their own limitations around raising them with their own limitations because everybody has them. Very few parents can raise a child that is completely open on every front, from ethics to religion to spirituality to career choices. It's kind of rare. So back to the differences between spiritual sovereignty and toxic positivity. Again, so spiritual sovereignty, like you were saying, doesn't require outside validation. It just requires your own validation and your own choices, emotions, and boundaries, and respect, self respect, respect for others. And it allows, like you said, for individual truth and peace to play itself out in our own bodies and minds so that we know our own proper boundaries within ourselves, how we handle our own behavior versus other people's. Give us some examples of toxic positivity and what that may look like or feel like to someone who is on a spiritual path and thinking that it's actual spirituality, but then it's kind of not.
This is a huge problem in the spiritual community, a huge problem.
It is.
It's a huge problem in our culture. Let's get start with Instagram filters.
Oh boy.
Everybody's beautiful. Nobody has any flab or cellulite or stretch marks with an Instagram filter. So that's a regular everyday example of toxic positivity. But in the spiritual community, people who follow a spiritual path, and this is why when I do my live streams on other platforms, I'm always like, look, I'm I'm still trying to heal. I have a an ass load of problems in my baggage compartment because I'm not completely healed. Nobody's ever completely healed. And so
No, we are not.
people who are on their spiritual journey and they're just like making videos and content saying, and everything's great. I'm so happy. I just meditate every day and I burn my incense and my sage and I sit in the lotus position and clear my chakras and everything's great. I'm calling bullshit on all of that. That is not possible. No one is completely healed. Every single person on this planet has something that to heal from. And I'll give you an example. When I started about a year or two into my mediumship journey, I had some other stuff come up from my past that I thought I had healed from. And it came up really strong and it was very painful. And I was talking to my mediumship colleagues that I work with a lot about it. And I'm like, I don't understand. I dealt with this. I went to therapy. I read self-help books. I've done all kinds of work on this. And they're like, sometimes another layer needs to be healed,
Yep.
especially something that caused you deep pain.
Yep.
And so you may do a lot of work on things and then it comes back up. Nothing is ever completely gone, especially when we're talking about trauma. And
That's right.
everybody has trauma,
Yep.
in some way, form, or fashion. I know a woman who she's in her 70s. Talk about toxic positivity. She claims that she had a perfect family and her family was perfect and she wants the family of origin that she came from was perfect and she doesn't understand why her family that she has now isn't perfect. And I'm like, your family wasn't perfect. Who's fa- and she claims it. She's in her 70s and she claims it to this day. That's toxic positivity. No one's family is perfect. Period. I don't care who you are. You could live in a castle. You think those people over the kings and queens and prince and princesses are don't have any problems?
Right.
You couldn't pay me enough. But toxic positivity is putting on a facade of everything's great. I'm happy. All my problems are over. Just think positive. Just choose to wake up and be positive every day. Well, that goes so far, right? Saying everything happens for a reason can avoid accountability and empathy. Um, it's also we can also talk about spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
is when you say, I just meditate every day and it's great. It's like, no, that's not reality because there are things always happening. So that's my take, my brief take on toxic positivity. What do you have to say?
Like you said, we are in a physical world. We are not supposed to just come here and meditate all day. That's not the point of the physical experience either, right? So it's not just to find our healing, inspire others, take accountability, pick a career that brings us joy and fall in love, right? But it's all of those things times 10. It's taking chances, it's experiencing yourself and getting out there, sharing with others, giving away parts of yourself while also receiving parts of other people, not sitting and just consuming media all day
Mm-hmm.
or sitting in the yoga studio 6 hours a day. I don't know. I'm sure we have some White Lotus fans out there.
I love that show.
Yes, we love that show. We do, admittedly. But the whole last season in Thailand, where the daughter goes and
Mm-hmm.
wants to sit with the monks, and she just wants this quiet life and wants to, soul search. And we all have that hunger. But then ultimately she realizes at the end, the soul searching is not about meditating 24 hours a day and eating vegetables and sleeping in a humble yurt. It's it's about finding inner peace so that when you go back into the world, wherever your place is, and for some people it is to live in the mountains and not have a lot of contact with people. That's fine, but you're still interacting with your environment. You're still interacting with nature. You're still energy and interacting with the world, the physical world around us. And when it's time for us to leave the physical world, we will return to that frequency energy, right? So while we are in a combination of, well, actually, it's a non-physical world. It is all frequency. We've talked about that. But for the sake of our audience who still is trying to grapple with the idea that this is not really a physical world, it is still a spiritual world made of frequency and high vibrating molecules. We're here to immerse ourselves in whatever experience that we are seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, touching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, however you're interacting with that, as long as it's authentic and hopefully peaceful and consensual, people, and hopefully it comes from a place of divine love and not fear or programming, that is really the heart of finding your spirituality and making the best of what we are experiencing while we are here. But making the best includes being honest, like you said, not stuffing feelings,
Mm-hmm.
not having boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
keeping your mind open to things that give you that sixth sense of whether it's wrong or right, good or bad. We all have it. Well, correction, most of us have it. I know some people who have really, really off compasses when it comes to deciding what's good and what's bad.
That's true.
We won't mention any names. Some of them are in the press right now. But oh, my bad. But yeah, and so I just feel like as long as you're true and expressing yourself, and there are nice ways to do it, there are discerning ways to do it. Like, you're not going to go up to a coworker and make a huge, like, if you have a issue with somebody, you're not going to make a huge naughty filthy rant in front of people disrespectfully. You can dislike somebody or the way somebody's doing something and, kindly step aside without humiliating or embarrassing anybody. I have to do it with actors constantly. I have to correct behavior. I'm not going to do it in front of 15 people. I'm going to do it one-on-one and say, hey, what's going on here first? Get the person's input before I try to correct or
Right.
misunderstand a behavior, right? I'm going to be diplomatic about it. But spiritually, yes, all those things can help. What we talk about on this podcast all the time, right? Understanding what frequency first, then it's the physical world that we see, and using aromatherapy, and using crystals, and using meditation, and using self education, reading, self reflection,
Critical thinking.
critical thinking, yes, gratitude, all the outside and innermost things that can bring us peace and understanding. But ultimately, just answer your own questions. How do I feel? How do I see the situation? How does the other person see me? How does another person see how I'm reacting to something? How do I want them to perceive me? So all of these little self-awareness tactics can bring us that piece of spirituality because, again, we're asking the right questions of ourselves and trying to be honest about it. But yeah, going into spiritual centers, it's like when you get out of church and everyone in church is just can't wait to get to the freaking diner. And so they act all peaceful, may peace be with you, shaking hands. And then as soon as they get in the parking lot, get the fuck out of my way.
Right.
It's like everything you were just in for the last hour and a half has now gone to shit and it's out the door. And you're back to real life. And the only escape was those few minutes while you were sniffing your frankincense and taking your wafer. Right. So
Yep.
it can't be for show. It can't be not even for show for yourself. Let it be authentic. And if you don't want to go to church, if you don't want to go to yoga and you want to do it in your living room or you want to meditate in your car instead of in your bed or instead of on a mat in a room with other people, it's up to you. It's your
Exactly.
own journey. This is why I love Wicca because metaphysical Wicca is there's a lot of solo practice that goes on. I do have a coven and I meet up with my coven mates at times for rituals and all of that. But I love the solo practice because it's so creative and it's so divine and it's just me gathering my thoughts and connecting with my higher self in the same way that you would when you meditate on Monday mornings with the gang. There's nothing like being okay with yourself alone with your thoughts, with your energy because we're going to go out alone just like we came in alone. You know what also it's so important in friendships and relationships that if you are your authentic self, not only does that inspire the other people around you to be their authentic selves,
Yes.
but it's only fair to them that you show them who you are, right? Just
Yes.
like it's only fair to us that you show us who you are so that we don't waste time on the wrong energies, right? Or invest like my friend in an 9 to 11 year friendship only to think that one day they're just going to snap and say fuck you. The more authentic we are, I think the more authenticity we attract at the same time so that we can live more enriching lives with those who belong in it. And we can recognize things quicker too if we are on that authenticity vibe.
I agree. And I think that we should be authentically healing and holding space for all of our emotions, joy, sadness, anger, peace. All of those emotions are sacred. I teach my clients a lot of my readings are spiritual guidance. And a lot of times the fact that we have to find a baseline of emotion to where, of course, we're going to have joy and highs and we're going to have sadness and lows. But if we reach a baseline of authentically healed emotion to where if something great happens, that's wonderful and we can feel it. But if something horrible happens in our life, we know we can go back to that baseline and not delve into the deepest depression that we can't get out of. And so that comes getting to that baseline is I'm not talking about toxic positivity and just pretending nothing happened. I'm talking about understanding that we're going to go through highs and lows and super highs and super lows in our life. And as long as we are at peace and accept that and come to an understanding that we can't control the outside world around us and we can't control when tragedies may happen in our life, that we are so secure in our emotionally healed state to the degree that we can be, that we know we can recover from a tragedy and not let us drag us into a spiral of sadness and depression that we can't get out of.
Right.
So you have to feel your feelings to heal, not pretend everything is fine. So we have to sit with our feelings and feel them. And that's where a lot of people become addicted to things because they don't want to feel their feelings. They're taught, especially men, young men and boys are taught not to have feelings. Don't cry, only girls cry. Why are you crying? There's no crying in baseball, right? We all know that line from the movie. Boys are taught not to have feelings. And so, is it a surprise that we have a crisis of young men in this country who don't know what to do with their feelings and emotions and are committing violent crimes at an unprecedented rate? Like, is that a surprise? It shouldn't be. They're taught not to have feelings. And so, what do? Instead of feel sadness when they're sad, they get angry because
Yeah.
anger is socially accepted.
Yep.
Ways, not sadness.
And it's also depicted as an attractive trait in a
Yeah.
partner, the
Yes.
bad boy. And
Yep.
as a playwright, you know this about me through the theater, my protest art is really at the heart of everything about allowing men to have their feelings because I've always been attracted to the sweet, sensitive, crying types. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, there's nothing sexier to me than a man who cries. And my husband is not afraid to show his emotions. And I think it's so freaking beautiful and warm and it makes me hotter than some asshole who walks around with his chest out and beating it all day long. Right.
Yeah.
And so I take my male characters and I always take them from a machismo, kind of again broken, angry, resentful, can't show his feelings type of character, and I've softened them so by the end you have this putty of a beautiful human being who's male rather than a man who is acting like a man. I want my characters to be human no matter what gender they are, and I want them to be empathetic. So I always write my guys this way, and I break at least three of my machismo characters in this show coming up, Afterlife, for this reason because I want people to feel safe with the safe guy. I want people to feel okay with a man who's in touch with his feelings and can receive love instead of the programming of the genders. And you see this, like you said, in politics, you see this in the media, constantly reiterating the bad boy, the muscles, nothing can penetrate me. You're going to do what I freaking say, the dominant energy. I just wish that male and female energy could just kind of come together and interweave themselves with this peaceful diffusion instead of like the guy who wrote the book about Mars and Venus. This is how men and women are, and this is how they need to be treated. And this is where the ego needs to be fed, and this is where you release the ego. It's not about because you have an ego, you have to operate this way. It's about adjusting both people's egos to bring it to a more spiritual place where there's more understanding and peace and more love, reverence for each other's genders. I've seen transformations of super machismo men go into a spiritual journey and come out different people. And I would love to see more of that in society.
Well, and men need to feel safe in their relationships with their
Yes.
families and their romantic partners.
The men need to feel, you're right, the men have to feel safe coming out of the womb from day
Yeah.
one to express their emotions. Absolutely. And so it has to start, like you said, with family, with relationships, but really it needs to start with raising these men with that reverence and that empathy and that be in touch with yourself. It's okay
Yeah.
if the world upsets you. Take it out like us women, we are expected to be dainty and, you know, same thing and to be strong. But if we're going to have our emotions, well, it's excused as hormonal, PMS, high expectations. So we're allowed to have all of that because of our raging hormones and our sensitivity and all of this. But I can't believe that can't be the same for a man, that a man can't let his emotions out in the same way we do.
Well, and I taught my sons, I have two adult sons, and I taught them from a young age because, I married a man who thankfully is a recovering alcoholic, but he wasn't taught by his family that it was okay to cry and be sad. So,
Right.
how did he express his emotions? Alcoholism
Yeah.
and anger. right? And so, and plus, my father was a violent, abusive alcoholic and drug addict who has now been sober since 1989, thankfully. But I saw those both of those examples, and I had two sons, and I knew that I had to teach my sons it's okay to feel your feelings. And now my oldest has a daughter, and he is the best, kindest, sweetest, most involved dad. And it just heals every part of me that didn't get that from my father. Seeing the pictures, it just warms my heart and gives me hope for the future. Because I said, I didn't say big boys don't cry and don't have your feelings. I'm like, it's okay to have your feelings. You just have to express them properly, right? You can be sad, you can be mad, and you can tell me all of those things, but you can't be disrespectful and mean, right? You can still tell me, but you can't be mad at me if you're mad about something that happened at school. But you can tell me about it. My younger son is expecting, and he's a little more fiery like me. And so, yes, I did teach him to express his feelings, and boy, does he express them. Um, so at least he expresses them when he has them, which is good. He just, maybe needs to learn to express them a little more appropriately.
Well, and that's one more note on the spirituality is that, when we're seeking to be more spiritual, I know that you and I throw out fun little anecdotes that certainly open the door to that. Say 5 things you're grateful for, which is
Mhm.
perfect and it's such a great start, but that is not where it ends. It doesn't
Correct.
it doesn't end in, like you said, going to a meditation and just going through the motions of what a checklist is to do to be spiritual. That's not what we're saying. That is actually toxic positivity. It's just going through a checklist of things. Well, I'm doing all of this. I'm doing my meditation. I'm saying my 5 things on my gratitude list. I am eating a vegetarian diet, but how come I still feel like shit? It's
Because you're eating a
because
vegetarian diet and you're eating all those foods filled with fillers that are crap and worse for you than meat. But I digress.
but she digresses. But yeah, no, and it's because it's not about doing this or that to become a certified spiritualist. It's literally about the things that you start to do that make you and move you a certain way to open your mind to a new way of thinking because you're doing those things consistently and again authentically. If you're not feeling those rituals, don't do them. Find something else that makes you feel close to God. My friend is a hiker and he doesn't do any of the woo-woo stuff, but the hiking is his church.
And
He will
that's a
go out in nature.
meditation.
Yeah,
That's a
it is.
meditation.
He goes out with his group. It's so cute, and he socializes and he does his little 5 mile hikes once a week, and that is his church. Just like me when I'm with my horse. When I'm with my horse, nothing matters. The bills don't matter. What I have to do tomorrow doesn't matter. Horses, and I think especially big animals, keep you in a state of the present moment because if you don't, accidents can happen, right? So animals ground you in a space that is present time. And my other church is my ice skating rink. When I am skating, it's like I'm in a cathedral. It feels like a cathedral. It's cool, it's spacious, it's echoey. There's something magical about being at the ice rink. And when I'm there, I don't think about anything but staying on my 2 blades, not falling, and just enjoying the glide. So, whatever it is for you, if I were doing a spiritual checklist, that an average guru might hand me, again, none of those things would fill me like going to my rink or being with my horse or practicing here with my frequency music and my own spoken meditation that I wrote out for myself versus what somebody else is telling me what to do. So you have to just find that thing that vibrates and makes you feel electric. It's what makes you feel alive inside and full of divinity.
And not having to be inauthentic. Like when you're around certain people in your family or friend group, if you don't feel like you're really able to or being yourself, maybe change your vibe and say, I'm going to be more of myself. And you'll find out very quickly who will love you unconditionally when you are truly yourself. I mean, respectfully, obviously. I'm not talking about just being out of control. I'm talking about if you like talking about science and you go around a bunch of people who only like talking about shopping and you start talking about science and they start making faces at you, maybe that's not your, crew. You know,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
benign example, obviously. Learn how to say no when people you're around don't resonate with your truth. Like I know you and I both have gone through some family and friend disassociations because we weren't resonating with them and they were not respecting our boundaries.
And
Um,
it's not just a one-time thing. And we're not saying just because you walk into a room at a party, sit down and talk to somebody, okay, I could talk to this person for an hour or two, or I could talk to this person for 2 or 3 minutes. No thanks. You move on. You don't even think twice about it. You just go, that was great. But when there is
yes,
a long time pattern of continuous gaslighting, continuous
disrespect.
negative feedback, and right, and the fact that when you're around certain people you cannot relax or feel good, or you're not really having fun, no matter who it is, family or not. This could be a mother, a father, a grandfather. You do not have to be in the presence of that person if you are uncomfortable, or
Mm,
if you are feeling like something is off, if you are being put back into a programmed box and expected to act a certain way that, it, like you said, that goes against who you are. I don't do it anymore. Like you, my limit was reached, and that's that. And I am happier for it, for my choices. And I can't even consider going back into the energy with certain people ever again. I
absolutely.
can't I can't fathom it, because I am so free and happy without it, that there's no reason, because I'm an adult and I can make those choices. I don't have to do that anymore. I
You
don't have
know
to
what
hang out
though?
with anybody I don't want to hang out with, no matter who it is.
You know what's sad? There are so many people who still feel like they're obligated to hang out with people that make them uncomfortable and
Right.
make them upset. If you, and I had a loved one who was supposed to spend some time with someone who made them feel very uncomfortable because they were traumatized a long time ago. And I said, this person felt like they were going to vomit for a week every day before were supposed to meet with this person.
Oh
And I,
no.
and I said, if you have pre-trauma and then post-trauma to the next trauma, like you're getting re-traumatized every time you're forced to be with these people,
Yeah.
not being authentic to yourself. Now, obviously, you should have therapy and you should figure out how to resolve that issue. So we have complicated lives and complicated relationships. So make sure you have boundaries, sit with your feelings, seek professional help if you are experiencing, a lot of anxiety, pain, or depression. We are not therapists, we are not counselors. Please make sure that you are taking care of yourself properly and appropriately. And how do we heal? We have to choose self-compassion instead of forced optimism. We have to recognize when, if we're acting positive in front of people we're uncomfortable with, is it performative or is it genuine? Usually, if you're with people you don't really want to be around, it's performative. So maybe shift your group of people to people you can be more genuine about. Balance your manifesting, whatever you're going to manifest for your future, with acceptance. You can desire more while honoring where you are. And I would say some questions to ask yourself: where have I felt pressure to stay positive instead of honor your own truth? Another question: What does spiritual sovereignty mean to me personally? Do I allow myself to feel uncomfortable emotions without shame? And shame, we could just do a whole podcast on shame, by the way. So many of us are sitting in so much shame all the time.
Coming soon to a podcast near you.
Yeah, we have to write these down. How can I integrate both light and shadow in my spiritual practice and in my daily life? So, this isn't just about spirituality, this is about our daily lives. True spirituality and true authentic living isn't about bypassing pain, it's about transforming it through our own awareness of what we're feeling and love for ourselves, first and foremost, and for others, but boundaries. Don't forget boundaries. Spiritual sovereignty is authentic empowerment, living your truth while honoring your humanity. And just know that you are your own best guide. Get to know yourself. Spend some time alone. People who are never alone have the hardest time with this because they don't get to figure out who they are. The divine within you knows who you are and can teach you who you are, but you must be still and present with yourself without the constant distractions of the world and the people around you.
It's okay to even talk to yourself.
Oh,
Sometimes I have little conversations with myself. I do a lot of writing and art like you do, which is so therapeutic. Thank goodness we're creative, because one of my friends is in this loop of same thing, trying to find her spirituality, but she's in a loop of work, come home, do what I'm supposed to do, go to yoga, gym, meditate, and that's it. And forgets that there's, like, again, that there's life and people and energy out there, things to do and immerse yourself in, and it doesn't have to play on this loop. And she is one of the most you know, hungry for that fulfillment of feeling like she's spiritual. And she's, again, going through the motions of it. And she's like, why do I feel so starved, spiritually starved? And I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to do, what they tell me to do. And that's the thing. You don't listen to what other people tell you to do to feel spiritual. It's something that you get to decide. You get to, like I said, for me, it's the barn and the ice rink and of theater. Of course, I do theater for a living, so it's my career as well. But your church is wherever you want it to be.
exactly. And on that note, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, talking about spiritual sovereignty and toxic positivity. Stay true to who you are. Be you, be your authentic self, but not toxic positively.
Or negatively.
Or negatively. Thank you so much, Lady Shadow. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you, everyone. We will see you again next week. We love you all.
Thank you so much for joining us this episode for the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Find us on our podcast Facebook page for Magical Mondays live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will help you magically slay your weekdays, and for awesome giveaways. For more information about what other spiritual things Nick and I do and offer, visit peacefulnickthemedium.com. That's Nick with just a K. Or to connect with me, Lady Shadow, soulsandspirits.com is the place to go. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, we would absolutely love that. Contact us at soultwinstars@gmail.com. See you next Friday. I'm on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Facebook, and on YouTube. Sending you all so many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, know that you are all cherished.